We should be live.
Hello, Internet.
What's up, everybody? We are here doing an after show. It's going to be great. It's definitely going to be very cool-headed. No one's going to get angry.
Hello, everyone.
Certainly not.
All right, so Erika, what'd you think of the debate?
Oh, man. It was definitely something. I mean, the thing is that it's like I've said this before. I spoke with you guys, some of you, actually all three of you last night, and I said the same thing. I genuinely felt like some of the things that he was saying just straight up did not follow. Like there were a lot of weird non sequiturs where he would say something and I would be like, wait, so are you saying this? And then he would be like in a tone that was very much, you are an idiot. No, that's not what I'm saying. And so finally I was like, all right, I just need you to go ahead and explain this to me. You know, if you're going to, I prefaced my whole intro by being like, I'm not a programmer and I'm not a geneticist, hoping that could bring things down to a level where discussion could occur. But from Maddox's point of view, obviously that was not something that he was keen on doing, or I guess he just overestimated my ability of understanding programming lingo, which I'm not a programmer, you know. There was a lot of argument from incredulity. I would say that it boiled down to a combination of that, irreducible complexity, and playing with stats that he got from like Stephen Meyer.
I hate that stat thing.
Yeah.
It's like, if I make up a big enough number, then it disproves evolution. No, that's not how any of this works.
He literally did that, though. His 1 in 10 to the 64th is made up. Yeah,
the thing is that people who study abiogenesis are like, you can't come up with a stat for it. There's just too many variables that we don't know about and can't account for, that to come up with a number is straight up just it's making things up. Also, I mean, I feel like he's very keen on this one singular argument where he's like, how can rules be assigned without an intelligent agent? And I couldn't understand why that was so different from any of the other laws that govern our reality. Like, why is it so difficult to understand that chemistry plays a huge role in the evolution of mechanisms in, like, for instance, replication?
The only thing I could think of is that you have to conceive of something happening in the cell that violates the laws of chemistry.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the case either, and I included this in my intro, there are 2 papers that have come out semi recently, like in 2017 and 18 respectively, I think, that are like, look, you know, the goal of thermodynamics, quote unquote goal, is to increase entropy, right? That's just the law of physics that our reality abides by. Mm-hmm. And for organisms or rather for organic particles to self-organize to a degree, given that organization can lead to an increase in heat dissipation, it should be, with the given components present, somewhat inevitable, given that it increases entropy overall.
Yeah, well, life is a fundamentally entropic thing. It maintains a locally low entropy, unusually low entropy internally, but it advances the environmental pace of entropy significantly.
Right, the entropy of the system. And the thing is that it was like, so when Standing was like, it's going to be an ID debate, I was like, it's not going to be an ID debate. It's going to be an origins or bust debate, because it always is with Maddox. Yeah. So, you know, and that's fine. Like, I'm willing to have a conversation about something that's outside of my field, so long as it's understood by everyone present that it's outside of my field. But, you know, Maddox is very keen on these kind of ideas of like a gotcha, where it's like, I'm saying a lot of jargon that you don't understand. And he's right. I'm not a programmer, and therefore he's right. So I'm very much looking forward to going through that debate. And by looking forward to, I mean, I'm not looking forward to it, but sitting down and combing through it with a fine-tooth comb, and dismantling what it is that Maddox actually thinks. And then really fun literature search to see if what he says is true is in fact true. I was blown away by the part, and I, you know, hopefully displayed that attitude in the conversation. But when he was I was like, are these papers that you're talking about? What are they? You know,
just
and
name
he's like,
one.
Yeah, he
and he goes, yeah, I didn't really feel like it. Yeah, and I was like, okay, like, I get that you're mad and like heated or whatever, but come on, it only makes you if you're not willing to provide a source.
Right.
You know,
and the thing is,
far be it Oh, go ahead, Dapper.
Oh, sorry. I was just thinking, he's claimed to have a database full of such papers. Open it
I know.
and pull up the first title.
Well,
That's all it takes.
RJ looked through the folder like during the debate because I was like, look, chat, go at it, please. Someone find this paper for me because obviously I'm in the middle of a conversation and can't do it myself.
Right.
And RJ was like, look, and RJ's a source maniac. And he's like, it's just not here. Like what he's saying is present is not present. Which I know this seems a little insidious and this is complete speculation, but it almost feels like, because Standing has done this as well in the comments where he's like, look in my source list. And then there's over 200 papers, most of which are the topic. And they're hoping, at least again, this is speculation, but the hope may be that it's like you're going to be too lazy to go through all of the minutia of every single paper to find the precise claim that they're looking for. So they can just maintain it on a basis of, well, you didn't find the paper, you were too lazy to look through it all. Which is very, very ridiculous. And to me, from a perspective of like, what's the goal of these conversations? It's to get a better understanding of the other person's perspective. But if you're not going to provide your sources, then it just becomes, like
that's why
amusing as in a space musing, like a thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Not like joke inducing.
Well, that's why in, like academic circles, you have citation methods where in the body of the text, you indicate unambiguously what citation you're using. Now, I get it. It's not as easy or as, I guess, stylistically reasonable to do a, endnote citation during a live debate on YouTube, or like to put, reference numbers in your YouTube video. Okay, I get it. But in those cases, if you have things that require citation, there are probably not going to be very many of them. Because, you're going to be talking in a YouTube video for maybe 20 minutes, on a debate, maybe an hour or so. There's not going to be that many points that you're going to make that you couldn't provide a source for any of them if asked, provided you have such a thing.
Well, and that's the thing. So in the conversation right after the stream ended, Maddox was saying, because I basically told him after the stream, I was like, you know what, like you've given me a lot of interesting stuff to look into, and I'm saying that from a perspective of sort of I press X to doubt, and I'm going to look into it and see what I think. Because I don't know, I don't think I haven't come across very much literature that thinks that the genetic code is a computer code in the way that he wants it to be.
That's because it's not. Yeah,
because it's not. At least not according to the contemporary scientists, I guess, conventional science. Yeah. So I'm sort of the perspective where it's like, and he was after we got heated and then cooled down, like during the Q&A, he was much nicer and much less condescending in my opinion. But yeah, I was sort of on the verge of getting upset multiple times in the debate because I was like, a debate isn't saying a lot of jargon so that the opponent doesn't know what you're talking about. A debate is understanding the other person's ideas and dissecting them on a conceptual and on a support level. So, saying random stuff and expecting the other person to be able to parse it out when they're self-admittedly not in the field just seemed kind of lame to me, I guess. Like, whatever, far be it for me to tell someone else how to debate, but yeah, Speed of Sound of Gravity. Can you tell me which issue of Nature he was claiming all those papers? Yeah, I couldn't tell you. I know RJ looked for the paper in the side chat and said that he couldn't find it. And also, Speed of Sound of Gravity has said in the past that Maddox is not actually a programmer. So maybe he's not. I don't know. I don't know what Maddox does. I've been to his YouTube channel and he's had like a near-death experience or something, and that's where his sort of ideas are rooted in. But
wait, he's not the Lazarus Syndrome roommate of Faithful Honest True, is he?
Oh God! Oh, I don't know. He might be.
He's not Australian though, so probably not.
Yeah, Faithful Honest and True had a field day in the side chat as well. He's very fond of ad hom attacks against me in particular, and like that's fine. Like I don't think that Faithful Honest and True, like I don't think his goal is to get across to me on like a intellectual level. I think it's more like I think this and you should think this too.
I honestly think that he might have something up for you because you're sort of the reason I kicked him from that after show he was on with us.
Yeah.
Because basically he kept interrupting you, and at one point you're like, no, it's fine. And I'm like, no, it's not fine, Eric. I'm done.
Yeah, I need to be more assertive, honestly. I've got to figure that out with myself. I want so badly for the conversation to go well, and so it's like, oh, I'm so eager to like find common ground with the other person. But
there's sometimes where
can't be found.
Yeah, the common ground is just going to be that one person dominating the conversation.
Yeah, and that's how I felt it went last night. Like I was talking to Luke afterwards because he watched most of the debate, and he was like, yeah, man, like you gotta be better on like directing the conversation where you want it to go instead of just defending your position. And I was like, man, you're right. Like I spent so much time being like, no, I think abiogenesis is entirely viable, that I didn't say, hey, what's your model look like? And I should have done that. So maybe if I have a conversation with John in the future, that's what
Thanos snap is their model.
Yeah, the Thanos snap.
Although reverse Thanos snap, I guess.
Yeah, bunch of ash collects and turns into living organisms.
Dirt of the earth.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, but you think you're descended from a rock, Erika.
That actually brings me on to my next thing. Erika, do you think John knew what he was talking about?
The thing is, from the things that I could understand, there were certainly some mistakes made where I was like, because it's like, I'm not like a biochemist, but I know what ribose is, right? Like I know it's not a protein, and he was pretty insistent that it was at one point. There was also a point where
really,
it's
not that he just made it once; he like repeatedly made the same mistake. Oh my!
He went over and over about it.
I can't remember.
So he's like never heard from anyone that OSE denotes sugars, glucose, maltose, sucrose, none of those.
Fructose, cellulose. I mean, it keeps going.
Jesus Christ.
The thing, his argument is very conceptual, and like at one point I was discussing like some of the hydrothermal vent aspects of current, abiogenesis hypotheses, with the lipids forming near the hydrothermal vents, thanks to the heating of like, I think it's carbon monoxide and hydrogen, and I was like, yeah, so that's how you get lipids, and he's like, they don't he's like, how are they self-replicating though? And I was like, I'm talking about lipids. He was like, oh, we're talking about different papers. So how do they self-replicate? I was like, we're talking about lipids. We're talking about lipids. Like lipids are forming in the presence of the proper elements near a hydrothermal vent. We're not talking about proteins. We're not talking about RNA. We're talking about lipids.
Does he understand? Did you guys talk about at any point like the amphipathic nature of lipids? No. And so okay.
His lipid confusion is kind of like looking outside at a snowfall and wondering how the snowflakes breed. They're not breeding. Yeah,
and that's a great way of putting it, because I was kind of like, wait a second, what? And honestly, at that point in the conversation, I was like, I mean, I could literally like sit there and be like, okay, let's have a biochem 101 lesson. Yes. And I'm not good at biochemistry. Let me make that very clear. Like biochemistry is not something that I am an ace at, but I know what lipids are.
From what you've told me, that sounds like, honestly, you should have just asked them basic macromolecule questions, like what are amino acids? What is the basis of proteins? What are carbohydrates? It
would have devolved. He would have gotten mad, like, because he got mad at one point. Like one of my, I guess, quote unquote, gotchas was when he was like, yeah, we're fine. Junk DNA. It was the classic standing thing. It was like going out the window. Like it's like, no, it's literally just not though. Like I don't know what else to tell you other than nothing is supporting the fact that the human genome is, or that any genome is entirely functional. I mean, yeah, like there were some cool comments. Evograd actually pointed out on the GRAR 2017 paper that was like, yeah, there doesn't need to be a cap on it, like from a population genetics standpoint. But that doesn't change the fact that the projected functionality of the human genome is around like 12-13%. And he's like, insistent on this. That was the one that I was like, what? Because he was like, yeah, there are all these surgeons and like doctors and stuff like that, and they're coming up with all of these functionalities for things that people say there weren't functions for. I'm like, I'm fine with that. I'm just telling you right now, you're not going to get 100% or even 80% functionality. It's just not going to happen. And then he's like, well, I've got a ton of papers right here. And that's when I was like, which papers? Tell me these papers. And then he was like, nah, I don't really feel like it. And I was like, okay, like, then don't talk about the papers, I guess.
That's
like,
pretty interesting, because it would be interesting to see what percent of ALUs, what specific percent of transposons of ERVs, what specific percent are functional. Can they figure this out?
It's going to be low.
No, and that's the thing though. Like, we have projections for that, and we have like they're loose, but they're like, I guess you could call them like error bars, where it's like, yeah, we could find another 3% of functionality for the genome as a whole. I don't know about ALUs in particular, but it's like,
well, it's just an example.
Yeah, sure. And that's the thing that's crazy. Like, and I felt like that, now that you mentioned it, I think that was a pretty common like trope throughout the conversation, is that it's like we're speaking in generalities, and if we get to the specifics, then the subject changes.
Well, that's because
shock.
So I think
shock and horror.
I'm trying to do some, armchair psychoanalyzing here, which I'm not in the least qualified to do, but bear with me. So I think what Maddox is doing is, whether or not he's a programmer, I think he's someone who is familiar with programming. Like, he probably can code, like, even if he's not a professional programmer, he's probably someone who's done a little bit of coding, who could slap together some basic programs. Or maybe he is, in fact, an excellent expert coder. But either way, what he's doing is he's bringing all of that and then imposing it onto biology, because it makes biology accord with his biases. And then he's just talking about how he's just basically translating programming terms into vaguely analogous biology terms. Like when he's saying things like, oh, DNA functions as a code. He's thinking about things like, like logic strings and reference numbers and reference tables, and you can bracket things off and all this stuff. But none of that is in all how DNA functions. It's just not. You could not use DNA to write a computer program in a way that a cell would then use as something useful. The only way to do it is you could assign each nucleotide a binary value, and then just straight out write out in binary version of like ASCII a computer program. But that would be a nightmare, and it wouldn't be biologically useful. And it would be much longer than any actual or most actual genomes would likely be.
Well, and so we had a conversation too that brings something up, because it's like he's very okay with proposing ideas when they match up one-to-one with genetics, but the second that it becomes difficult to make that one-to-one correlation, then again the subject changes. Because I was talking about redundancy, like I'd mentioned to you guys in the Twitter conversation that in our group chat beforehand, and I was like, all right, so what we should expect is that if the genome is if the system is designed right, it's like, imagine redundancy as dikes preventing a river from overflowing. What we should see then is redundancy where it's necessary, right, in areas where the river tends to frequently overflow and things like that. But what we actually see is maybe 80 dikes, one after the other, boom, 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 off the course of a river in random locations. And then where it's needed, you either have one or none or not enough, or et cetera, et cetera. There's like an element of randomness to the redundancy that we find in the genome. So it's like what Dan was talking about. It's like, why don't we have P53 enough? Is it P53?
Yeah, the guardian of the genome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, why aren't there more copies of that? That seems like a good form of redundancy.
And elephants do. They have like 38 copies where, yeah.
So right. And so
God loves elephants more than us.
Yeah, God loves it. Yeah, he likes them more. So they were actually made in his image. So, but it's like it seems
Brahma.
Yeah, Brahma. Yeah, it just seemed very like pick and choose. And someone in the comments, I make the mistake. I'm petty, and so I like to read the comments, especially when I feel that they're going to be vitriolic towards me, because I don't
when
know,
aren't they?
self-loathing. Yeah, when aren't they? Especially, yeah, on Standing's channel, I much fewer people enjoy my presence on Standing's channel than they do on my day-to-day.
Oh, no. I think you're in the sort of the Darth Vader category, where they don't dislike you being there. They love to hate you there.
Yeah,
It
I get
gives them immense pleasure.
I get to be an SFT boogeyman, which is, whatever.
Are they all males? Is like everyone over there male? Is this maybe part of the problem?
It's hard to tell though, but it does feel like it.
Yeah.
There's maybe some pent up anxiety there.
Well, the other thing is though that
Listen, I'm sure me having double X chromosomes doesn't help. I'm sure that doesn't help my case.
They certainly haven't asked for me back, so all I'm saying,
Well,
no, Jackson, they're scared of you. You come in and wreck. I am nice, and you are coming in with the stern. You give them all a paddling.
I would honestly like to talk to Standing again, or Maddox. I think that'd be fun, but whatever.
So
there's just not Neffy.
There is something I think Erika and I have talked about, but I don't know if I've talked about it with anyone else here. But if you look at the people who spend time on the creationist side doing these arguments, it very, very heavily skews male, regardless of what exact topic it is or what channel you're on. Basically, female creationists, with like only a very small number of notable exceptions, just don't care to have the argument.
Yeah. Exactly. They on either side there's a low representation. I know Shadow Dancer is new on the scene. She had some kind of discussion. She was on Maddox's team against, I think it was T Jump and Amy on Modern Day Debate about, I think it was evolution. I'm not sure, but yeah, I've watched some of her content. It's very strange. Shadow Dancer has very strange content. She's very
Is she alien lady?
Yeah, very much go back to Pepe.
Yeah,
like,
should I take a look at this?
You should. Yeah.
Yeah, she's the lady who was with. Actually, she and Maddox were up against RJ and some other guy, weren't they?
Yep.
And she brought up like the ancient aliens thing to him. Yeah.
Oh, I remember that. Oh, her. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Why didn't I take a look at her? I should look at her content. That was some nutso stuff. And you could tell that Maddox was not very happy about that. He was just like, oh my goodness.
Well, because that's kind of what you get with creationists. I mean, with like the evolution side, there are conspiracy theory people, but when you turn over the creationist side, you got flat earthers, you got ancient aliens people, you got all sorts of crazy crap running around. And so it's like, they got the whole gambit. Sorry.
Yeah, it's well, and that's one of the things that I point out is it's like, hey, if you want to use the hermeneutical approach that young earthers use, but then not just stop applying it at various points where it becomes inconvenient because the science is far too obvious, you have to be a flat earther. The young earth hermeneutic will require you to either be intellectually dishonest or a flat earther. Pick one.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. I know their favorite one is to point to this I think it's a verse in Isaiah where he's like talking about the globe being the shape of being a certain shape. And the word is like the one-to-one translation is it is a circle.
Yes, the circle of the earth.
They have a word for sphere. So why didn't they use the word for sphere?
Yeah.
They did the same thing in Genesis, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in Genesis, one of the big ones that I actually, while I was even in high school, I went to a creationist lecture, and after the fact, I asked was it even after the fact, or did I interrupt? I might have even interrupted the speech to say, why don't we have to take the floodgates of heaven seriously? Why don't we have to believe that there are doors in the sky that let through water?
Yeah.
Like, you're requiring me to take all of this other stuff literally. And then in this passage that doesn't seem especially different from any of the other ones, we get this thing about God opening up literal doors in the dome of the sky to let in water.
Yeah, the doors of heaven, the floodgates of heaven, and it's just like doors in the firmament. I mean, the word for firmament too, isn't it like rakia, and it means like solid?
But he also in Job he stores snowflakes and hail in sheds.
Yeah, he's got storage depots for snow and hail.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't run out of that stuff. It's really important.
Which presumably means that he has angels on top of the cosmic ocean gathering up this ocean water and freezing it into snow and hail in like snow and like a weather factory, so that then they can, he can send like, I don't know, like Heaven Express to go grab some packages of hail from the warehouse.
No, they use Amazon.
Oh, they use Amazon? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Why do you think Bezos is the first trillionaire? I mean,
yeah, I was gonna say, Bezos is just Gabriel or Michael. He's just descended and decided to make it big on capitalism.
guys, also remember Horizon Zero Dawn? The apocalypse was caused by the first trillionaire. So
You know,
I didn't see Horizon Zero Dawn, so
there's a.
it's a game.
Yeah, it's a game, but
I didn't play it. Oh yeah, Horizon Zero Dawn.
There's a lot of robot dinos in that one. which I
Yeah.
love.
Yeah, I remember that now.
Sorry,
Now that
sidetrack,
I saw gameplay footage of it.
Yeah, I never played it either, but Luke and I have been working our way through The Witcher 3 right now, so that's what I've been immersing myself in the lore of The Witcher 3.
I believe Islam has something on the ostrich egg illusion, which is ostrich eggs are fairly globular as bird eggs go. So, but then it's interesting because there are actually members of the religious council in Saudi Arabia who are in fact flat earthers.
No, thank God. We got the boys at the top of the brass on it in all sections. Great. I love it.
Yeah. These are the kinds of people who, during a fire at a girls' school in Saudi Arabia, decided not to save the girls because they couldn't be properly veiled in time for them to be saved. So then, rather than risking anyone seeing their faces, they thought it would be better to leave them in a burning school to all die.
Oh, good. Humans are the best.
Lovely.
Humans are the best. I love it. I love our thought processes on that. That is so human.
Yeah. And it's the country with a minimum marriage age of 9.
Oh man, it's that. You guys know the subreddit Noah Get the Boat?
No. What?
It's really great. It's just like humans doing things that are like extinction worthy. That's the whole concept.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
there used to be a subreddit for that. It was called r/watch people die. But
yeah. Watch people die. Yeah, that one got flagged a while back.
I didn't. Oh yeah, I think they moved everything to a different site, but I didn't know about it till a friend said, "Hey Jackson, watch this," and I went,
Oh, God.
"Did they just die?" And he said, "Yes, they did." And I was like, "Oh my god!"
And you're like, "Can I?" That's NSFL, not safe for life.
Right?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
But let's see. Wait, so Muhammad would have failed the minimum marriage age in Saudi Arabia? Not quite. So the minimum marriage age is there because technically, when Muhammad had his quote unquote marriage to a girl at 6, it was actually a betrothal, and he waited 3 years to actually perform the full marriage ceremony and consummate the marriage.
A real gentleman waits.
And betrothals were rather common up until like the past century.
Oh no.
Yeah. So as far as I know, there's no minimum betrothal age in Saudi Arabia, but I might be wrong about that. But I know that the religious councils in Iran have officially declared that there basically isn't a minimum betrothal age. And then they've argued about an appropriate marriage age. I think the last I heard it was somewhere around 12 currently.
The very fact that they argue around that age means there might be a few issues going on there.
Yeah,
I agree.
Snafus.
Like I think like we can have questions and so there should be an age of consent and marriage age.
Absolutely.
And there's questions like 30 is clearly too high.
Yeah.
And I think like 15
6 maybe a little low.
Yeah, 6 is definitely quite low. But like if you're like, oh, I think it should be 17, and someone else is like, I think it should be 19. Like, okay, well, sure, I can see why you would argue in any of those cases, right? But we're talking about like 9. Should 9 be like? No, it shouldn't be. You can't consent to properly dress yourself.
Yeah,
we have to get a subcommittee on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to get a committee together to argue about that.
We need independent counsel.
Yeah, absolutely.
At any rate.
So back to evolution. Now that we're done talking about child abuse.
Yeah.
Yes. Erika, which part of the debate that you consider to be the most infuriating?
Probably at the beginning, easily at the beginning, when he was like, he kept being like, "You're missing my point." You're like at least 4 or 5 times. And finally, and like I said earlier, I was just like, then explain it to me. If I'm missing it, treat me like a 5th grader and explain to me what your point is. Because if you're, communication is a very important skill to have in a debate where it's like, hey, I want you to understand where I'm coming from so we can discuss one another's ideas. It's like, if I'm not picking up on it, 3, 4, 5 times, and neither is anybody in the side chat, it might not be a me thing. You know what I mean? It's like you mess up once, maybe it's me. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention. Mess up twice, it's like, well, maybe you could have been a little bit clearer. Mess up 4 times, 5 times, and no one seems to be getting it. And it's like, all right, maybe make yourself more accessible. And what I finally think it boiled down to is that it was like like I said earlier, it was like, how do these things know how to follow the rules of replication and transcription? How is there specificity and things like that? And I'm like, I don't know why that's difficult to understand from like a basis of chemistry and stimulus response, but far be it from me.
Actually, I didn't ask it as like a question for either of you, but I mentioned it in the live chat. I was like, wait, how is it that chemistry isn't specific? It follows pretty set rules and patterns. Like, you get these molecules with this much energy in this kind of proximity, and they do this one thing. That's what they do. There aren't questions about this.
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
No, I think it was he paused for you, Erika. You should probably go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm glad you guys watched it and also are as lost as I am on the specifics on what he was actually saying, because I'm like, what's the problem? What is not specific about chemistry? What is not specific about physics? They follow. Do
you think that they don't consider these things to follow like statistical rules? Like when they think about a reaction, they don't think of it as like on average, this is going to result or whatever. This is more likely going to result. Right. They just think of it's either going to happen or it's not.
I
think that's part of it.
I think it's got to be that. And I think it's also maybe something fundamental on the level. Wait, hold on. Speed of Sound of Gravity says there is a weird connection between John's brain, between programming logic and his inference to design. I think that is also valid, but I think it comes down to this idea that it's like he wants to make it a 1-to-1 comparison, and it's like because code requires input, and some people have made the comparison of the genetic code to being like a computer code, therefore the latter must also require input by an agent.
Is there any analogy to like introns in computer code? Because I'm not aware of any.
I don't know. I couldn't tell.
Maybe you could argue about computer viruses, which can insert code in places where it ought not to be.
But I mean, like they do this. The genes have to cut out section. Like, do programs have to remove sections from their code to be properly processed? Do they normally have to do that? I don't know. I'm asking.
Not that I'm aware of.
He was talking about machine learning for a little bit, and he's like, machines can replicate code. And it's like, so I looked into that afterwards. I was talking to Luke about it and stuff like that. And it's like, yes, they can replicate code and under certain guidelines, like write things, but there's no replication with like alteration, if that makes sense. And then there's no selection either. So it's like, I don't understand how they're making this 1-to-1.
There are, ironically enough, evolutionary simulations that have been used to do things like solve engineering problems or just simulate biological evolution. And those, in fact, do produce new information basically spontaneously as a result of having been fed parameters and allowing literal random changes to the code to take place, with next subsequent generations being then tested to see if they are, in fact, better at completing whatever code it is. You can actually design airplanes using evolution in a physics simulation where the parts of the plane are actually controlled.
But did a skateboard ever evolve into an airplane?
Well, Back to the Future
ever produce a non-plane.
How did a wheel come out?
How did water turn into a skateboard?
This is the stupidest idea in the history of the science religion.
It is dangerous to teach children.
Oh, Erika, come on! You can't mix up too much though. Evolution is an idea, and it's a religion. But Kent doesn't call it science religion. That's more of a flat Earth thing.
Yeah. Okay. True. Yeah. Kent isn't a flat earther. We can give him that. So
he won't argue about it though. He did one video where I saw him take to task, quote unquote, the flat earthers. Like I said yesterday, I legitimately don't think they have a grasp on the basics of translation replication. I mean, probably not.
Yeah,
But,
I don't know.
Yeah, probably not. I doubt any of them have taken like an intro biology course.
Kent is at least as bad at proving the globe exists as he is at disproving evolution.
Are you serious? He like can't even take on flat earthers. It's
first of all,
trig, literally just trigonometry.
He won't take them on like live. As far as I know, he only did one video talking about the subject, and his main argument came down to satellites. You're an idiot if you think if it's not a globe. It's definitely a globe. I've traveled. And it's like, okay, right, but
it's like we understand that, but that's not going to be a good argument for them.
Right. Like it's you clearly don't know what kinds of things they're going to say because
Kent is an odd case. He's I mean, what can you say about him? He's suing the government for $500 million. Like, what are you gonna do?
When he was found guilty on every charge,
and he's found 50 charges, right? Something.
Something. It's insane.
The only reason he wasn't found guilty on his next trial for mail fraud was jury nullification. Here's the thing, though. I am a proponent of jury nullifications in cases where the crime is not something that deserves being punished. So I know I don't tend to get very political, but if you find yourself on like a marijuana possession jury, just vote to acquit. 100%. It is completely legal. However, this is a case where the juror later came out and basically said he was a fan. And it's like, okay, yeah, but mail fraud is actually a problem. Like, that's a real thing that causes problems in society. Unlike, say, this guy was found with like an ounce of weed, which doesn't actually cause any problems unless the cops make it a problem.
If the blunt does not fit, acquit.
Yeah.
Right. So
acquit.
And so it's just like, that's not what I think you should use jury nullification for. But
yeah, Kent is an odd case. That's very much like a deserving of a reality TV show, if anything is the life and times of Kent Hovind at Dinosaur Adventureland.
We got to send the guy who was trying to do the reality show about the Tiger King down to Dinosaur Adventureland.
Oh my god!
Oh god! Yes, please.
I would. The thing is I'm torn because as much as I would love that, I also don't want Kent to make extreme amounts of money.
Oh god, yes.
Okay, but look what ended up happening to the Tiger King.
Yeah, true. He is in jail.
So he didn't. And the other thing is, I mean, the Tiger King was running that zoo, quote unquote, for profit.
Yeah, Joe Exotic.
Right, and he clearly was still not swimming in cash. Like, he had a lot of assets that if liquidated could turn into money, but it's clear that his cash flow was not super great.
Yeah. Carol Baskin. It was all
Carol
her.
Baskin.
Yeah, it is all her fault.
I hope that like Kent also has a harem. I hope that the guys who sit in and listen to his thing live are his harem.
You just want it to be like a Doc Antle thing, a Dr. Dino like style harem of Dinosaur Adventureland-ites.
Yes, but it's like the guys that you can hear in the background like snickering about what he says, and they all live in trailers, you know.
I love that. They're all very close out there.
He is.
No, they live in one trailer. It's Kent's trailer.
He is apparently on wife number 3, although I don't know anything about this woman except that she apparently exists. Like, when he had wife number 2, who was Mary Toko, who's a big
the anti-vaxxer.
She was a big anti-vax advocate. And for a while, Kent was pushing the anti-vax stuff, and he still does a little bit, but he's toned it down, and he's also removed all of her content, which, I mean,
he's mad. He's very. Kent strikes me as a very bitter man when it comes to divorce. He's, he seems like the kind of guy that you wouldn't want to take to couples therapy because he'd just get mad and walk out once the therapist was like, "Hey, Kent, maybe you should move your family like out of a commune and a gravel pit and maybe like get a nice apartment somewhere."
It says here in Judges 20, okay,
yes.
that a man
in Song of Solomon.
Well, that's actually part of the problem is that Kent Hovind is the kind of person who would say that the husband should have final authority in the house.
Oh,
And And who would say that except in cases of, say, cheating, that divorce should basically be illegal.
What about spousal abuse? I love that they go straight to cheating. It's like that's the worst thing that can happen in a marriage is your wife sneaks behind your back and cheats on you, not like, actual physical.
But when a guy does it, it's fine.
I don't know about Kent specifically, but I do know that most of the larger, even still conservative, like American Protestant denominations, also would count cheating as, because the actual phrase in the Bible is that you've broken your vows. Most of them would count that as breaking a vow, since you did promise to love and protect. That is sort of the opposite of beating someone. So maybe you broke that vow. Maybe you didn't break the fidelity vow, but there are other vows in there, all in the mix.
The loophole. We got the loophole.
Well, I don't even know if it's really a loophole. I would say that the author of that text probably intended it to mean any of the marriage vows that you may have taken if you violate them.
This is also the same group that destroyed and raped all the young people in a village. So, maybe not the people we should go to for sound marriage advice.
Wait, Baptists?
They kept the little ones.
What? Baptists?
Oh, no, I was thinking the Bible. I'm thinking in the Bible.
Actually, the Old Testament is much more liberal on divorce. You actually have to get to the New Testament before you.
I wasn't talking about divorce. I was just talking.
Just general.
I'm just thinking in general, like in terms of here are texts that we can turn to for biblical for marriage advice. Maybe the Bible is not the one we turn to.
Okay. Well, I think one of the problems with the Bible in terms of marriage advice is that it's written in a context where marriage was a survival mechanism. You got married because you and another person could divide your labor between yourselves and get enough done so that your family would likely not starve. A divorce was usually going to be something that ended up with at least one party being homeless and a beggar in a society that does not have great surpluses of food. So there is a case to be made that if you do not have a partner and you are, say, a 50-year-old woman, you may well just starve on the streets.
Yeah.
So is that better than staying with a man who beats you occasionally? I mean, it's a pretty shitty kind of situation to be in. And I wish that no one had ever had to make that decision. But the fact of the matter is, when food is a scarcity and there are still famines every few years, those might be your only options.
It turns out being alive is just not that great sometimes when it comes to the period of time and also your sex or race.
Yeah. We live in the best time to be alive in history.
Yeah.
I mean, there are places where it hasn't really improved much, but overall, if you look at, say, the average human, they are much better off now than they have ever been.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not this month.
Anyway.
Yeah, okay, true.
Anyway, moving on. As we're way off topic.
It's an after show. That's what they're for.
It's light politics.
Yeah, going back to the to Matto on genetics and such, when you brought up gene redundancy, he went on to compare it to some companies having multiple servers in different locations, which honestly seems strange to me, as you'd think he'd compare it to redundant copies of code. A redundant code copy. It seems the way he's comparing genetics to code would seem like a much more apt comparison.
Yeah, I don't know why he went that route. I genuinely don't. And again, he seemed very keen on making programming analogies, which is fine, whatever. But it from my perspective, I was kind of just like, man, I don't know how many times I can say I'm not a programmer. If a dialogue is important. But I do know well enough about programming to know that was a little bit weird, right? It seemed like that was more off base than his usual analogies.
I think it's because he knew it wouldn't be a very good comparison, because there's redundant genes, because having redundant genes is useful, surprisingly enough. Big surprise. But having two copies of code seems a bit useless, because you want to have one line of code for a function, not have that function be tied to two of the same line of code. You need to know that code
generally speaking, you don't do that in coding because you need a single reference to have a single referent in a code.
Yeah.
Coding is, I'm not an expert on coding, but coding is extremely, extremely precise. And you can't simply have big chunks of repeated code just in case, because one of the other problems is when a code is compiled, it is simply compiled in order. You can't like recompile it back up and down and things like that. The references need to be there set with a one-to-one correspondence in that code, or potentially in another file in a reference folder where you can still grab that, and then you can maybe later go back and change that other file to change the reference. But still,
this is when I wish my friend was online, because he's a programmer. He makes video games.
Nice.
What to do, and he would have been great for that.
The only thing I could help with a video game with is much more on the artistic side. I could not do.
Same.
Like I could provide probably some pretty neat models. Like,
Right.
Actually, my friend Legs came to me last night. He was like, "Hey man, you think you can make some models for a game I'm trying to make for my programming class?" And I was like, "I take commissions."
You're like, baby, just toss that PayPal info my way.
Well, he did not say that yet. He might, and I'll give him a good rate because he's a good friend of mine. But like, look, if you have artist friends, do not ask them to do hours worth of work for free, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like asking your plumber friend to come and fix all your plumbing issues and then just expecting him to do it and go away. Doing art takes time and effort, and doing it for someone else means I'm giving up the time and effort I could spend on the art I want to make.
Yeah, exactly. It's a time sink. I think a lot of people think that art is just inherently fun, and it is, but also it's very time consuming. So it's like it's nice to be it's nice to make a little money for your
exposure is not payment.
Well, that's true.
Exposure is not payment. Exposure is not payment.
I've actually had that. Someone once said, "I'll put your name in the credits." I'm like, okay, I would rather you put the money in my PayPal.
Yeah, I'd rather you put the money in my bank account. Yes, please.
Yeah, like payment. Now, I have accepted credits before. Like, ever hear of Creatures 2?
Creatures 2. Yes.
Yeah. So back in the day, I might have still been in high school, but there was a modding group that were trying to get this particular mod working, and they had a problem where the way the creatures move is they have sprites that rotate around pivot points that are defined in a text file, and they just could not get it to work. And I was like, I can do this for you guys. Don't worry about it. So, I grab these sprites and drop them into an image editor, and I just get all the coordinates and enter them in the right format and sent it off. And suddenly they were like, "Oh, hey, this works. What do we owe you?" I'm just like, it took me like 20 minutes. Just put my name in the credits for the mod.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Like if it's something like that, then whatever. Like every once in a while someone will say, "Oh, hey, can you like make a quick thumbnail?" Okay.
Yeah, thumbnails. I think thumbnails are fun, and they don't take very long, so I'm happy to go with thumbnails.
Although apparently I've heard that if you were making thumbnails for the Non Sequitur show, you can be paid thousands of dollars a month, much more than the show is taking in.
Oh, good God. What a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I don't want to get too far into that. I'm just going to say...
big egg.
It's probably not the case that you're charging your own company for your own work in an amount more than your company's making. That seems like an unlikely situation to have actually happened.
Yeah, it seems like a very bad business move, and honestly sets it up to the way that looks like, this guy's trying to steal money from the company.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little.
Can I also say, and I also I have seriously asked this. Is there any analogy to, in programming, like bits of code that reinsert themselves in different places in the program every time you run it, like transposons or ALUs, something like that?
I don't know, and I don't think so.
Because that seems like an absolute waste of time.
Not that I'm aware of. So computer programs can repetitively generate bits of information, but they're going to be going into output files. Like computer programs will create log files like every time they're run sometimes, depending on the program.
Yeah.
You can always access those log files, and it'll also usually delete log files that are too old. but those don't go into the actual code. The log files are not stored in the code. So if you open up that like exe file in a text editor or something, so you can actually see what's in there, your logs aren't in there.
Or something like Gulo, which I know they like saying, everything has some cryptic function in the genome, but Gulo literally doesn't have a promoter region, so it can't even be transcribed.
Yeah, a lot of his argument boiled down to on that point is just like, just because we don't have one now doesn't mean we won't have a function for them down the line. And then it's like, okay, cool, but then don't make arguments from trajectory.
Yeah.
Don't say that we're going to when there's no indication that we will.
Well, yeah, and I mean that work. I think that works for some things because even the geneticists like Ono who coined the term junk DNA are like, we'll probably find uses for some of this stuff in the future.
Yeah,
but
of course,
with some things, we know it can't work.
Right.
We know it can't work, and they're still. I have never heard a response to this. I really haven't. I don't know what they would say to that, and I would love for whoever has a conversation with them next, because I know they'll never ask me. Just ask them what do they think about Gulo, because it can't work. So
yeah.
Excuse me, just 1 second.
Yeah, that would be an interesting conversation. I sent a message over to the old SFT for you, Jackson. I said, he says, I'd love to set up Jackson and John. It appears Jackson hasn't done a debate in a while. We should see if he's available.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I'd like to make it more intelligent design versus evolution, though, in order to avoid a strictly abiogenesis talk. I like a
yeah, absolutely. I know nothing about biochemistry. I'm not a biochem person. I actually, someone else, it was Inspiring Philosophy, actually asked me if I would debate James Tour. And I was like, I would, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
But I don't know anything about biochemistry. I'm a systematics person. He would school me on everything. So yeah, no.
No, and that's the thing. I mean, like I can't stress this enough. It's like when you're debating outside of your field, like there's absolutely room to be like, look, I don't know this stuff. I'm interested in debating the concepts of it, but like I'm not going to know the specifics. Like I get you on that.
I think it would be. I would have some questions because Cy Gart, for instance, I ask him occasionally if I come across an interesting abiogenesis paper. I'll be like, hey, what do you think about this? And usually he's actually like, oh, this is interesting. It could be true. It could not. It may not be. We don't really know. And that's why I like talking to him. But with Tour, where it's something where it's going to be combative, there's no point for me to try.
That's the I felt a bit similar in my conversation with John, just on like the combative stuff. He definitely comes in guns blazing. I don't think that's really necessary, but whatever. Some people are more passionate than others, I guess.
Well, yeah, with John, yeah. Have Standing send me a message, or if he wants to do it through you, I don't know, wherever works.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. I just I received a parcel that included a can of spray paint, which I did not want sitting out in the Phoenix sun in June.
Ooh, wise.
Yeah. So I was like, let's bring that inside ASAP.
But yeah, if
already warm to the touch, so
I would like to, intelligent design, because I've seen some of his, from his talks with RJ, where like everything or most of the things he says, oh well, that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. I'm not talking about that. So I would be interested to know what his actual knowledge, wink, wink, of evolution is.
Oh, that reminds me. I need to email Bill because he confirmed yesterday that he's willing to have a very specific dinosaur talk.
Ooh.
So, yeah, we might get into. Sorry.
Tell me what days work for you, and we can work something out. I mean, I'm happy to host it. I'm happy to get Standing to host it. If you have, Standing has a very specific kind of community, and pun intended. But I don't really have a preference. It's totally up to you, or you can host it, whatever.
Oh, also, can you tell him I would rather it be like just a discussion rather than a formal debate, because I hate formal debates. I really do.
Yep, I'll tell him.
Okay.
Jackson, I want to see you debate like Matto on specifically ID systematics versus evolutionary systematics.
Oh, they have none. There is literally none, which is why it would be funny getting him, because I was thinking about this is an example I brought up when I was on Speed of Sound of Gravity's channel. It's like you can't get them to conceptualize how non-parsimonious their phylogenetic trees are at the kind level. They will not do it.
That actually makes me think.
They won't do it.
My question in the Q&A to Maddox, because he brought up body plans during the debate, I asked him, what's a body plan? And he just gave this generic, like, oh, it's the body plan of, like...
The body plan is the body plan, I agree.
Yeah.
He's like, whale body plan or lion body plan. Okay.
I mean, do you remember... sorry. Do you remember the... I don't know if all of you watched it, but I did a couple videos, there's more coming, on this guy in his image who seems to be a fairly... he's probably on a similar level to like Standing or Maddox in terms of like where he is in terms of knowing creationist arguments in literature and whatnot. And when trying to distinguish birds from dinosaurs, he said, oh, reptiles have a very variable body plan, and birds have a less variable body plan. And so my only comment was like, well, if you zoom out far enough, they all have a vertebrate body plan or a tetrapod body plan. How specific do you want to be? Because you can say that any group of animals has a specific or a variable body plan, depending on how big or small.
Eukaryote body plan.
Right. I mean, unless you're going to be very specific about what you mean by body plan, it doesn't mean anything.
Oh no, they won't do that. That's if you ask them, the cat kind. Okay, define the morphological and genetic characters that distinguish the cat kind from the hyena kind or the binturong kind or the dog kind. Do it, please.
Yeah.
No.
No, you won't get that. That is a non that there's nothing to follow from that.
Heck, I want to know why civets aren't cats according to creationism.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Kivets, binturongs, genets, hyenas, all of the meerkats.
Right. Well, because the thing is, when it comes to actual real biology, the reason they're not cats is because cats are defined as Felidae, and we just decided that would be the level where we put a family in, because where families go is fundamentally arbitrary.
Right.
Like you could just rename Feliformia or Pheloidea to be Felidae, and then put all of the families that are currently there as subfamilies, and it wouldn't make any difference because all of that is arbitrary.
You're absolutely right. That would be a very fun conversation, is talking about the species problem. Like getting them to talk about species complexes. I think that would be very fun. Watching them be like the biologists, people who study this for a living, cannot differentiate these two quote species.
Right.
It's how do you plan on doing this and dividing them up into kinds? Please do.
Well, it's also very convenient that at almost every turn, whatever scientists were classifying animals with the idea of special creation of every individual species, which is the original idea behind special creation, right?
Right.
That wherever they happen to peg the family, it just happened to be right. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Predictions. They make predictions.
Except that they weren't making predictions. They were just like, these guys seem similar enough. We'll just call it a family. But that's a fundamentally arbitrary thing, right?
Staphylidae has over 60,000 species in it. Road beetles.
Their baraminology is the game of eyeballing it. That's the whole thing.
Well, yeah, that's what they do to resolve these ideas. It's like, hyenas, they just don't look enough like tigers.
And lest we forget that early systematics taxonomy made a lot of mistakes quite often on where things went.
It did, although a surprising amount of it has stood up.
Oh, yes. I'm amazed that taxonomy even worked, period.
Well, it shouldn't have. If everything is specially created, it shouldn't work above the family level. Like things should go up to the family, and that should be it. There should be no nested hierarchies above that. That doesn't make any sense.
The natural world should look more like the monster manual from Dungeons and Dragons than the actual natural world.
The orchard, the creation orchard.
Oh, you know what the real world should look like? Everything from Avatar, because everything in Avatar is chimeric.
Yeah, basically.
Everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you should have rampant polytomies, and it's the exact opposite.
Yeah,
So
we need little turtle ducks and bear dogs and all sorts of wild
Lion turtles.
lion
Ooh,
turtles.
a lion turtle, I like it.
It's actually
lion.
pretty awesome.
So actually, what I want though is a creature with the head of a snapping turtle and the body of a lion.
that sounds absolutely horrifying.
I know.
That does sound horrifying.
I know. That's why I want that. That sounds like an awesome monster.
That just sounds like a basal archosaurid at that point. Just with
Yeah, a little
hair.
Well, yeah, with hair. Or maybe the scales continue down the body on top, forming like scutes or something. Because I can do whatever I want with the integument. I can give it feathers. It's a chimera. It doesn't matter.
True.
So Dapper, you think like when they're talking about if they're looking at like a gene duplicate, or if one species or one genus within a family has like a gene duplication, right? But none of the other genera of this family have that gene duplication. What that must mean, because created heterozygosity, is like all of their common ancestors had the gene duplication like in their in the sperm or the egg, but it was independently lost in every lineage except that one.
Yeah, that does seem like the conclusion you have to come to if you're going to go with created heterozygosity. Yeah. And as I pointed out, one of the problems with created heterozygosity is like just look at point mutations for now, because they're the simplest, easiest ones to understand. And we have a problem where taking just point mutations, you can have at most 4 alleles at any locus in the genome, in the nuclear genome, and less if you're doing like XY or ZW sex determination, because then you're going to get fewer. You're only going to get one set of alleles on the either the X or I think it's the W chromosome. So we don't see that. That's not how many alleles that most organisms have for their various genes with some significant variety. Like just look at humans. Just humans, who granted come from a bigger starting pool, but they have dozens of alleles for simple things like melanin expression or melanin content in hair or structural versus pigment-based color in eyes. I mean, and then if you expand that into kinds, right, you get more variation on orders of magnitude if you go into, say, Canidae and say, okay, how many alleles are there for any given gene across all canids around the entire world? You simply, in order to account for that much genetic diversity, just on the basis of alleles for genes, you have to have new alleles being produced via mutation.
Or we build extremely. Oh yeah, you can't have new alleles, so you retain the alleles through every common ancestor. They're just not expressed in anything except for like one thing. But
they're not. But the thing is, they're not expressed in the genome, so they're not.
Yeah, they don't exist. They're not there. Exactly. Yeah, it's so hilariously non-parsimonious that you have to say they disappeared in every single lineage except for one.
Well, they gotta say they all got deleted. And because we have preserved canid DNA from thousands of years ago, we know it had to happen.
I guess you could make an argument like, oh, the pairs that Noah brought on were miraculously polyploidal creatures that always had, their number of chromosomes halved every time they reproduced or typically until it came down to about the right number a few generations later.
Yep, they're all polyploid, all of them.
I guess you could say that life just started out with massive polyploidy to get this front-loaded genetic information, but do you have any reason to say that other than you're a desperate post hoc attempt to save your completely insane idea?
Dapper, would you say that is a rescuing device?
In fact, yes.
Oh my god.
A classic.
It's a goddamn inflatable raft of rescuing devices.
Every time a creationist says rescuing device, what's happening is projection.
The funny thing is that I found this out somewhat recently, but that's actually just an ism from replacing Darwin. Like, I thought that was a standing original.
Wait, it is?
Yeah, it's just from replacing Darwin.
Of course it is. That makes so much sense. They can't even be original with their insults. Jesus Christ.
See, what it really is, though, it really is projection, because creationism is just a series of increasingly more ludicrous rescue devices for an idea for which there simply isn't any evidence.
Yeah.
Against an idea for which there is mountains. And so they're always throwing up all these crazy things. Like we see it with like rapid plate tectonics or, flood geology, or what is it, hydroplate theory or something, where like every time you dig a little bit another layer down, it's like, no, this doesn't make sense for all these new reasons. And then like, oh, well, what if we throw up all these other rescuing devices? And you dig down another layer. It's like, nope, it doesn't make sense for these reasons. Whereas all of the things that are called quote unquote rescuing devices are things where it's like, well, the reason we say this isn't a problem is because we have the literature that says that either this is a prediction or this is a thing that actually happens, and that's why it's not a problem. Like, oh, your variable mutation rates, that's just a rescuing device. It's like, no.
Dapper, the thing with them is that science shouldn't work the way it works in their eyes. Like, if it changes, that's bad. Like, it blows my mind, that sentiment, that it's like, if you find something out, then it has to stay that way forever.
Well,
honestly, I would be happy if mutation rates were like all linear. Do you know how nice that would be for constructing like predictions of when the common ancestor lived? That would be so nice.
It'd be a hell of a lot easier, that's for sure.
Exactly.
So I think it comes honestly from an aspect of Christian theology, right? So Christian theology starts with one guy who gives his teaching to primarily 12 of his, closest friends. And they are the only ones who really have a full grasp on what is going on firsthand from this guy. And then it gets sent out around the world. And so the only change you can have is one that's going to be going away from that original teaching. And if we accept the premise of Christianity that one guy is in fact the perfect, divine Son of God, then changes to that would in fact be bad. It's one of the reasons why every reformist group in Christianity has basically been saying, oh, we're trying to bring Christianity back to how it was before someone implemented these lists of changes that we have.
And it's a heresy.
Right. So
Sounds like heresy. Let me call the Inquisition.
But the problem is that science didn't start out with some presumably infallible teacher who gave us a deposit of knowledge that was all that we needed for this scientific endeavor, after which we can only corrupt it.
I thought Darwin was our saint. Are you telling me this is wrong?
This isn't wrong.
Are you telling me I need to take down my shrine and stop the sacrifices?
No, you don't have to do that. You just have to not treat him as perfect. You can keep sacrificing. It doesn't bother me.
Oh, okay. All right, fine.
You know what? I still like the idea of doing, dances around the bonfire on Darwin's Day.
Oh, yeah.
Which actually, whose idea that was? It was C.S. Lewis's idea, because he found all of the proposed holidays being proposed by people who were generally against Christianity to be horribly boring. And he was saying, I would have celebrated these holidays if you made them fun.
That's
I'd just celebrate by doing a video every Darwin Day.
Okay,
so that's
Darwin's Day celebration. We talk mad shit about science. We bake fish Fishapod cookies.
Oh, yeah.
Fishapod sticks. Fishapod sticks. Guys.
I sit the entire family down and we all read The Descent of Man together. It's great.
No, we got to read Fertilization of Orchids for the Win. Come on, guys.
Fertilization of Orchids. Yeah.
Isn't that the one where he predicted the moth with the ridiculous long proboscis? Okay.
Yeah, because he's like, wow, these Madagascan flowers are freaking weird, man.
He's like, there's got to be something to pollinate them. It's
right. Otherwise, how do they exist?
Although
like all those old world flowers that seem to be very similar to New World flowers that rely on hummingbirds.
Hey, I think I read about that somewhere the other day.
Oh,
yeah, someone might have made a video about hummingbirds. I think that might have happened.
You know what? Yep. I am still blown over by the fact that not only are there primitive hummingbirds and primitive swifts, there are birds just outside the swift hummingbird split, dating to the time that it was expected.
None of which exist, according to creationists.
None of which, but it makes you wonder, because hummingbirds and swifts are not one family; they're an order. So does that make the pre-swift hummingbirds? Are they in a different kind, or are they the swift hummingbird kind? I don't know.
Well, that's my thing with kinds is every time someone mentions a kind, all I do is I think of the next most closely related thing I know of, which is usually
Right.
darn closely related, like just outside the clade.
Or
why
like the
not?
finches. They say, the finch is Fringillidae. Okay, what about Thropidae, which is the sister family?
Right.
The tanagers, what about these other passerines?
Yeah. It's crazy. And it happens all the time. You'll say like, oh, dogs are a kind. It's like, oh, what about borophagines? They're so dog-like that it would take an expert to actually differentiate them. And what about? And then they're like, oh, well, maybe they were in there. It's like, okay, well, what about like amphicyonids? You just keep going.
And then the bears,
Go to the other side. To go to the other side of carnivora. So if cats are kind, why not civets? And if civets are in the cat kind, how do you keep mimicids out?
No, you know what I love though is go to the base, the quote condylarths. Go to the base where Ferae meets Ungulata, and it's like, why are there mammals with features of both carnivorans and ungulates? Why does this happen?
What's going on here? I am
Someone
confused.
get these hooves out of here.
So actually, and I hope if you see this, you don't mind. But do you remember the guy that I moderated a debate for with Eric Vierthaler, and his name's Cody, and he later came on leaving Young Earth Creationism because he's no longer a Young Earth Creationist.
Noise, click
But
noise.
Yeah, in the after show, I asked him like, so is rhinoceros a kind? Okay, yes. What about horses? Yes. So I then say, I say why? Well, he's like, well, they look very different. I'm like, fair enough, they do. But are you aware of these fossil forms where horses and rhinoceri can only be distinguished by subtle differences in the cusp of their molars?
Oh boy. Yeah, like Cambytherium and Hyraceus and Hyracotherium and
Ethereum, good God.
Yeah. It's like these are identical animals, basically. They have slightly differentiated their method of feeding. One has gone for more browsing and one has gone for more grazing. But otherwise, at the base, when you get to the most primitive rhinos and horses, and I'm speaking, using these terms loosely, you get animals that you could not distinguish in life without a dental degree, basically.
Yeah, being a teeth. Be the teeth guy too.
That's awesome and then once you and then you have because you have Hyraceus and Hyracotherium, but then primitive to those you have Phenacodus and Radinschia, which are basal perissodactyls, which also looks very similar to the basal artiodactyls like Diacodexus, and they just keeps because mammals have not a great early fossil record, but there's enough that like you see it just keeps converging in the fossil record.
Yeah. Well, and when you get back to like the base of Artiodactyla, right, you're getting to pentadactyl animals who are running on, the tips of their toes.
Right. Yeah.
That's the name. They're running on their unguals. And the thing is, nowadays, when you look at a perissodactyl and an artiodactyl, their method of weight bearing is quite different, right? But if you look at the base where you get these still pentadactyl artiodactyls, all it takes is a slight shift from supporting weight going from all three of the 2, 3, and 4, and then just adding a little bit more on adding a little bit more on digit 2, and suddenly you're headed towards being an ungulate. An artiodactyl. But if you just keep pushing more and more on 3, suddenly you're heading on your way to becoming a perissodactyl. Like it's a tiny, tiny difference that can lead you in one of these two directions. And doesn't even seem to be some really strong like selection pressure for the artiodactyl condition. And it's also why the names, even in odd-toed ungulates, are wrong, because what actually matters is whether or not you're splitting the weight between those two digits or just keeping it almost entirely on the middle digit.
Yep, the lines are small and arbitrary.
Yeah.
When impossible. There are kinds.
But that's the thing. It's like, are there? Because every time you point to a kind, I can point to something that seems to violate that idea.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. On the order Proboscidea. I did a video on that. I have never seen creationists tackle elephants. There's one page I've seen. There's like one page on Answers in Genesis by Karen Viette, I think her name is. It's just like elephants are neat, and I said, "Yep, elephants are neat, all right."
TD Lane and I were on movie night. A couple weeks ago, TD Lane?
Yeah, it was like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we were on movie night with Striking, and RJ was there too. But we did this Ken Ham and Bodie Hodge touring the Ark in super low def, by the way. But
Okay.
they were talking about kinds, and they said, "Oh, we usually go with the family level approximately, but in one case we've even gone all the way up to order, and that's with the elephants."
Oh,
I'm like, really? So all of that stuff, all of those like gomphotheres and dinotheres, all this craziness that most people would say, yeah, that gomphothera looks about as much like an elephant as a bear looks like a dog.
okay. Because oh my god, because once you start getting the earliest elephants, I'm making a prediction. I think the gene, the tusk thing is like, I think it's basically like a couple genes that are turned on and off, because you have at the very base of elephants, you have like the tusk, little the incisors, and they become shovel-like on the bottom. That's Phyomia, and then as the elephants get bigger, they became more terrestrial because they were originally more semi-aquatic.
Well, yeah, there's a reason that the basal elephants and the basal Serenians are almost identical.
They are, yeah. But with dinotheres, you have it's on the bottom, whereas with other elephant, the Elephantidae, it's the upper incisors. But also, once you get into Elephantidae, they're like gaining and losing tusks like crazy. You get to Stegotetrabelodon, who has like 4, and they're so I think it's not a whole. I think it's only a couple of genes that are probably involved in that, and they're just getting switched on and off.
Yeah.
Well, I want to know how that many varieties of tusk arrangement can be pre-built into 2 elephantids on the Ark, or 2 proboscideans on the Ark.
Proboscideans, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, dude, I gotta blow out of here. I gotta give this room up.
Well, that's all right. And congratulations again, Erika, by the way.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Great
guys.
having you here.
Sorry,
So,
TV. What you say?
Have a great day.
Hey, will do. Thank you for having me on.
No problem.
Talk to you later.
Talk to you
Bye.
later, guys.
Bye. And also we're free.
Yep. Hey, honestly, if Erika hadn't sent me that, I wouldn't have noticed, because every time I miss like 5 minutes of the group chat, I'm just like, I don't know if I even can catch up.
Oh my god! Right? Yeah. When I'm at work and you guys have like 100+ messages going back and forth, I'm like, oh Christ!
I mean, it's mainly me and Colton.
Yeah, that is a lot of it. But no, I love being in there. But like I said earlier, like I got a big headache while I was doing my recording today, and I went and laid down for a bit, and then next thing I know, like this whole thing has been set up, and like the only way I noticed is because I had a message from Erika in our private DMs, because we don't have hundreds of messages a day. So I can keep up on that.
Better.
Well, that's why I tell Colton to email me papers, because if he puts them in there and
Unless
I don't
you're
look
right
at it, no, they're gone. They're totally gone.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, Colton, just email me the paper.
Yeah. But so I'm trying to think. I want someone else who's good on dinosaurs for me with a Bill Morgan discussion about the evolution of dinosaurs. And part of me wants to see if I can get Trevor Vail, but he's also going to be way too abrasive for Bill Morgan.
Achoo.
Oh yeah.
So, because
achoo.
Who's that? Is that a person?
No, Jackson is sneezing.
Oh, well, bless
He
you,
is
Jackson.
fake sneezing, as in to raise attention.
Jackson, if you have something to say, you should just use your words.
Yeah. You have a floor, Jackson.
Jackson has made a 4-part series on the evolution of dinosaurs.
Yeah, there's a reason that maybe I was asking right now.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Oh,
We're both using second order meanings here.
I see. Well,
Yes.
now Jackson is feeling dumb.
Jackson, would you in fact like to hop on with Bill Morgan at some point and perhaps go over some very specific points he has, like how do you go from breathing with a diaphragm to not breathing with a diaphragm?
Yes, I would. I would want.
Especially since the answer is diaphragms aren't primitive to reptilia.
Yeah.
Like,
But
they're actually an unusual feature found in a small number of reptiles.
I would be.
Rate the speed of sound.
I do have to ask you, Dapper. Did you see that paper the other day about possible ceratopsian anagenesis in Mexico?
I didn't.
Do we have a private chat? Because I don't want to lose the paper.
We just send it to me.
Okay, I can put it right here in the little side also, just for the moment.
Oh yeah, the private chat.
Hold on, let me find it.
I did hear some stuff about new Mesozoic egg finds that are ambiguously.
I haven't read that paper.
So I haven't actually read the full paper, mostly just because I haven't really had enough time that I wanted to dedicate to it. Although the reporting that I've seen from science reporting makes it sound like it's significant, but not like they're basically all that I can see from the secondary reporting is probably that the secondary reporting is being far too optimistic on the dinosaurian nature of the large egg when it could still well be a mosasaur. Okay. So let me pop that into
New Mexico. My bad.
Well, it was Mexico before it was New Mexico.
You know what? No, we're not playing this history game here.
Hey, you know what?
Iffy in the mosasaur thing and dinosaurian history for that egg. I'm open to it being a mosasaur though.
Well, that's the thing. It's a big leathery egg.
Yeah.
So would you say it is a big oof?
Oui. C'est un très big oof. But yeah, that's the thing. It's like from what I can tell, which granted I haven't gone in and dug right into the paper, and I'll probably do that at some point. But like, they found a big leathery egg. There are only so many candidates for animals that could lay an egg that big. Many of those candidates are dinosaurs, and many of them are mosasaurs. And it would also go some way to explaining why certain groups of ceratopsians have very scant representation in terms of egg fossils, ornithischians is what I meant to say. And also why hard-shelled ornithischian eggs, like in fact ornithopod eggs, don't seem to have the same chemical structure as the hard-shelled theropod eggs. And so there is some suggestion that hard-shelled eggs may have actually independently evolved 2 or 3 times in Dinosauria, and that it was not the basal condition. We know that it's not basal to Ornithodira because dinosaurs are the only ornithodirans with hard-shelled eggs. So, but then again, you get the question of what was the pressure that causes independent lines of dinosaurs but no other animals to develop hard-shelled eggs, because there's no in principle reason lizards couldn't develop hard-shelled eggs, right?
Yeah, that's actually probably the most fascinating thing about this to me.
Oh wait, I forgot. They're just kinds, and God just did it that way. We should stop asking questions.
Yeah, from when looking at like the theropod side of things, at least with coelurosaurs, you have the dynamic of incubating eggs, to which it could just be to keep the eggs more safe with a additional weight on top of them.
Right, but you could then say things like, okay, well, why didn't that happen to, say, monotremes, who also put most of their weight on their eggs and were large enough at some point, or who at least can incubate their eggs, and who were large enough to crush them? I mean, you could say, well, monotremes have a tendency to have eggs that only stay as eggs for a very short time. Maybe, but that's modern monotremes. We can't automatically assume that about the entire group. So it
definitely.
And then you get other things where it's like, there are other animals that could benefit from being able to be on top of their eggs, like crocodilians, who still have their nests raided simply because they can't watch all angles of the nest at once, because they can't be on it. They have to be next to it. So and I'm not saying you're wrong. That could actually be the reason. Although we also have things like sauropods had hard-shelled eggs, but it's not clear that they developed that at the base of assuming that Saurischia is still a thing, it's not clear that the basal condition for Saurischia is hard-shelled eggs. And so if sauropods, in fact, independently developed them, sauropods did not incubate their eggs, as far as we can tell. They seem to have buried them and then just left. Yeah. So what was the purpose of the hard-shelled egg for a sauropod?
That's very much a good question.
Yeah, but that's one of the things that I like about actual science is that we get to ask these questions and we can think up avenues to, look into it, and it suggests future research, and we can get new answers, which will raise up new questions. Actually, I would probably be interested in that whole pack of papers. I don't know if I would read every last one of them, Speed of Sound of Gravity, but I would be interested. But yeah, whereas when you get to actual science, we can ask these questions, and in creationism, it's just like, it's magic. Just leave it.
Well, I think it's even worse than that. I think it's even worse than that because they only care about a topic insofar as they think it supports them. They literally their interest in the subject only goes as far as how can we use this to, attack evolution. I don't. Every time I've read like a creationist work, I've never gotten the sense that they're actually interested in this. It only ever seems like they're doing this research to justify the end of we're going to destroy evolution.
Agreed.
That's probably true, at least in the current day, that's a prominent thing in creationism. It might even be universal. Although I will point out that there was a time when creationism was more or less universal, and people still did ask scientific questions. And
oh, sure. It is really more just reading Answers in Genesis, ICR, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think the problem with that is that the honest inquiry into nature via the scientific method has in fact led away from creationism.
Sure.
And so if you're left as a creationist, it cannot be because of your love for scientific inquiry. Because if it were, you would stop being a creationist. So I guess I can say you can only temporarily be a creationist while having a genuine interest in the scientific method.
Well, to quote an ID guy from yesterday, it's all a conspiracy. So peer review is a conspiracy.
Yes.
Everyone is just kowtowing to evolution because it's some reason. I really don't know why. Why evolution in particular? What is special about that idea?
Even though it doesn't, it refutes the idea of God.
Oh, of course.
Technology seems like a much better thing to kowtow to.
I don't know. It's kind of like the same with flat earthers when they say, we're all being convinced it's a globe. Why? Why? Does it make us inherently more pliable, or are we better at working or something? No, they never tell us why it matters.
The only answer I've gotten is because if everyone knew it were flat, they would have to know that there's a creator. And I guess technically, it would be hard for me to account for a flat Earth without a creator. So I guess kinda, but it also comes with the problem of the belief in a creator doesn't seem to be declining significantly worldwide. It is in some areas, but worldwide, it's really not a problem if you think that it would be a problem.
And also the educated people who were largely religious for most of history did not accept that the earth was flat.
Yeah, no.
They acknowledged that the earth was a sphere. And so this doesn't track just historically.
Right. In fact, actually, one of the oldest motifs in Christian art is Jesus holding a golden sphere with a cross on top. And guess what the golden sphere represents?
What?
The earth. Because the first Christians knew that it was, in fact, a globe.
Yeah, because the Greeks worked this out like a couple hundred years before. So.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that knowledge didn't stay hidden. I mean, the Greek science was spreading all across the Mediterranean and farther afield.
Yeah, so no part of it makes sense. No part of it. It's not historically feasible. It just doesn't account for any data. It's just poo. It is potato.
Are you saying
potato.
that YEC and Flat Earth are basically two sides of the same coin?
You know what? Not all YECs are flat earthers, but all flat earthers.
Actually, I think there are some of those like weird like alternate history. The Earth is much older than we think. Flat Earthers, like sort of
Yeah,
Because like Hindus.
yeah, because there's that weird section of Hindu pseudoscience that says that humans have been on Earth for billions of years old,
Right.
billions of
Yeah,
years,
I've
and
heard of
Earth
that.
is actually trillions of years old and stuff.
Mhm.
And it's like the exact opposite of young Earth creationism.
Yeah, I've heard some of that. There was a book. There were like some Hindu monks or whatever when I was at LSU Baton Rouge who would hand out books, and yeah, they're like, yeah, evolution is wrong.
Oh, it was probably Hare Krishna people.
It might have been, but I remember them saying like, yeah, that, like evolution is not true because, but the Earth is way older, and so it was weird.
It's a weird. I would, if I can find some good stuff in English on that, I might want to dive into that a little bit. I tried doing Muslim creationists, but unless all the stuff that's interesting is just in like Turkish or Arabic or something,
Is there any difference? Because
there are some differences. Yeah.
Really, because from what I've seen with guys like Adnan Oktar, they're literally just using ICR material.
So there's a lot of back and forth when it comes to the straight up anti-evolution stuff. Where there tends to be differences are in things like the exact order of creation and how likely they are to stick to a particular chronology, and their ideas about Noah's flood tend to be not the same. Because,
that's interesting. Okay.
Well, what it comes down to is that these stories are portrayed in much vaguer ways, and also in some cases ways that are slightly contradictory to the way those same stories are presented in the Bible. Because one of the things about the Quran is it basically reads like sermons that some guy gave after having read the Bible a few years ago, and he kind of remembers it.
All right.
That's actually probably accurate.
Yeah, that's actually what I think it is. I think that's the literal description of what the Quran is. It is actually admitted to be a series of sermons with one prayer, which is the first surah. Other than that, Islamic scholars say that these all essentially are sermons. Allegedly, they're sermons delivered straight from God.
Sure.
Okay. But yeah, they read like sermons that some guy delivered back when, he was like, oh yeah, I read the Bible like, 10 years ago? I probably remember enough of it. Let's just go with it. And so you get these vague references to biblical characters, and you get these stories where the story from the Bible is mixed in with legendarium from surrounding much later texts and stuff like that. So like you get in the Quran, you get stories from the Arabic infancy gospel, so called because it was popular in Arabic speaking countries with a Christian population at the time. But it's known to be like I think it's like a 6th century work. Like it's hundreds of years old. And that's why, generally speaking, Christian scholars don't take it seriously as a gospel, right? Because if you think there are time problems with the 4 canonical gospels, well, get ready for the infancy gospel, because it's orders of magnitude worse.
Right.
But things like that get just tossed right into the Quran, and we also get stuff from like the Talmud, just grabbed out of the Talmud and tossed in there. In fact, we even also get one thing that was in the Quran perpetuates a mistranslation of the story of Abraham into other languages that became common, where it says that Abraham escaped from the fire. And there was a mistranslation because he actually escaped from a city called but into a common language that was being spoken around in the area, Syriac. Was a word that meant fire. And so
Really?
it led about Abraham being priests in Mesopotamia trying to throw Abraham into a furnace to kill him because he was blaspheming against their gods.
Oh, that's pretty funny, huh?
And that makes it into the Quran too. So you get all this stuff where it's like, yeah, it's like someone read the Bible, some Bible fan fiction like 10 years ago, and now he kind of remembers it, and he's just going to tell you about it.
That is very funny. I do also want us to answer the question that was just posed about the proto feathers. I'm sure you can answer this better than I can, but I wanted to point one thing out first, was that with regard to that question, David Minton, who is a cell biologist who works for AIG, who usually spearheads their paleontology stuff because they don't have an actual paleontologist, he wrote an article, or he wrote one of the chapters of the AIG book 1. And in that chapter, he says there are no dinosaurs with feathers. None. So this is like 2013. So he says that, and he says there are like two that have been considered dinosaurs, it's Sinornithosaurus and Caudipteryx, but they're flightless birds. He says they're considered flightless birds by paleontologists. Okay, so every part of that's wrong. So this freaking year, and this will make it into the book because it's hilarious, he says all of the he goes full fiducia, all of the feathered dinosaurs are birds.
Yeah, Menton, I saw that. He did it in a lot. I don't know if it was his first time, but he did it on a live stream from AIG that I was in the comment for.
That's hilarious. Because in just the space of a few years, he said there are none to they're all birds.
Right. Well, the great thing is, so he's working for AIG, and he's saying Velociraptor and all the dromaeosaurs are birds. There are dromaeosaurs in the Creation Museum represented as like Jurassic Park scaly monsters.
Yes. Oh my God, yes. Oh man. That is just so funny.
So and I want to directly answer this. So could we actually pull that question up from Illuminati Dawn TD Lane? Okay, here we go. So Illuminati Dawn says, I have a guy telling me that all professors are nothing more than all protofeathers are nothing more than decaying protein fibers that end up looking like feathers. So that is actually a claim that does come from Fiducia and his toadies, like what's it, like Lingam Soliar or something like that.
Yeah,
like he's done a few things, and so
I don't remember. So.
I checked in your the rocks were there, and I found that's how I reconfirmed that he was actually a Fiducia guy.
Yeah, I mean, we discussed Fiducia, but we didn't really go into his other like small. What do they call it? The band group? So,
yeah, the bandits.
Crash Fiducia's band at some point.
So what he's basically saying is that these protofeathers are actually collagen fibers that have, because collagen persists longer than most other integumentary structures, they persisted throughout a partial decay process, becoming frayed, and then they were preserved. Now, this is actually a thing that you can see in modern instances of decay, where collagen fibers will actually give something that is in a certain state of decay a sort of furry look. So, for instance, sometimes whale corpses or shark corpses wash up on beach, and people describe them as being furry or shaggy. That's because those are, in fact, collagen fibers that are persistent. Well, I mean, in some cases, yes. But other times, it happens to whales, too. There's this furry stage that they have. But the problem is that when you get that, they don't tend to have a particular flow direction. And they also don't have melanosomes, because collagen fibers, by not being cells, in fact, do not have melanosomes in them. And also, they tend not to have anything like complex branching structure. But when you look at preserved instances of protofeathers, while some of them, I suppose you could make the argument, are collagen fibers, we're getting things like melanosome structures under scanning electron microscopes. When you look at them with very high definition, like light microscope cameras, you can see that there are fine branching structures, usually distally, on a lot of these protofeathers. Sometimes they have color banding, and of course, sometimes they just straight up have a rachis, and they actually have a full, like, I'm a remage type flight feather thing going on. So we have this whole thing from plumaceous feathers to downy feathers to relatively simple integumentary structures. And in fact, I recently watched some stuff from Ian Juby, and then went and saw where is he getting this idea? Is this an idea that's coming around? And turns out it was in like Creation Today and like AIG or something, that they were comparing alleged collagen fibers, quote unquote, on an ichthyosaur. And so I went into that, and that actually comes from one of the bandits who was comparing these alleged collagen fibers to what he thinks are collagen fibers on these dinosaurs. But it turns out that ichthyosaur fossil didn't have collagen fibers anyway. Those were tool marks from 19th century fossil preparers.
Oh no, are you serious?
Yeah, that was just
oh my God.
Yeah. So that's
like embarrassing. That's like actually embarrassing.
Yeah.
That was.
Oh my goodness.
Because I was like, I've never heard about collagen fibers on an ichthyosaur, and I look up the specimen, and it's something that was discovered in like the 1890s or something. I'm like, well, this has been around for a long time. Why hasn't this been a thing? Why haven't we talked about this? Because getting any integument structure off of a ichthyosaur would be big news, even if it is just collagen fibers. And I'm looking, I'm like, these don't look like they're actually originating from the fossil, because they're these big crisscrossing loops that start outside the soft tissue outline. And I'm like, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's not what I would expect. And so, yeah, I looked further into it, and yep, they're just preparation marks of people scraping tools across to remove the matrix to make the fossil more presentable.
Really sad. That's really sad. And I mean, okay, I'm not a paleontologist, but I would like, how do you make it in your career like after that?
Well, I mean, that's a David Peters kind of mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's oh my god.
David
that's
repeatedly been told by the fossil preparators themselves that prepare the specimens he's talking about that the mark that he's identifying as anatomical is a mark that they made with a specific tool that they can just go pick up.
That's did you see the comment that he left on the video, on the whale evolution video?
Yeah, you're hopelessly out of date, Jackson.
I love that he called me what a shoddy journalist. Man, that's the highlight of my year right there.
David Peters is that he's amazingly spicy. Like he goes 0 to 10 in an instant.
He said dolphins are the descendants of shrews, and that it's like at least baleen whales are descended from hippos. But I mean, shrews.
Yeah. Odontus. Well, and wasn't it actually the tenrex, which are the sort of shrew analog?
Tenrex. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, they're. You're right. I'm sorry because I was thinking of. Yeah, you're right. Tenrex.
Oh, I mean, look, it's not like tenrex and shrews weren't united in my childhood in the older taxonomy.
Okay, yeah, but now shrews are Eulipotypha and tenrex are Afrotherium. But even still, tenrex, freaking tenrex, like. Yeah. What?
So the dolphin. So dolphins are more closely related, according to David Peters. Dolphins are more closely related to elephants than they are to baleen whales.
What the absolute? How does And I'm willing to bet money that there are no like semi-baleen toothed whales in his phylogenies.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah, again, guys, our closest relatives are pangolins, according to David Peters.
Oh, Christ!
Does he think that pangolins and primates form a group?
Why? Why would they form a group? What synapomorphies are?
Well, the thing is, when you do your state analysis via Photoshop filter,
oh my
you
god,
can just make up what. Well, and I'm not kidding. Here, I'm right. That is how he finds his character states. Is he plops photos of fossils into Photoshop and applies various filters to them.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised with that because I was looking through the other parts. I don't know if you looked through his whole phylogenetic tree for vertebrates, but I was kind of looking at different things and I was like, how does he think these things?
No, it's absolute insanity. And the thing is, it's a combination of a few things. One is David Peters is an admittedly very talented artist who has a great sense of how anatomy that is there, or that would be there if he were right about the anatomy, would look on a creature, and he can do a lot of really well done reconstructions. In fact, when I was a kid, I had a book illustrated by him. It was called Raptors, and it was all about dromaeosaurs, and it's still very well illustrated, even though they got the integument wrong. But it was published in like 1994. So what are you going to do?
Sure.
Yeah. But the thing is, he started to get it into his head that he could do this better using photographs of fossils and photo analysis techniques. But what that boiled down to was he was taking pictures from journals of fossils and then just dropping them into Photoshop and applying upping contrast and twiddling around with, various filters and, like emboss and inverted embossing and
oh no.
And he's thinking that he's finding all of these significant things that he's just not. Like I remember I looked at a picture he found. It was some basal like archosaur. I don't remember which one it was, but he was claiming it was a pterosaur ancestor. And he did that because he had highlighted this little circular region anterior to the the pubic arch, right? And he was like, that's a prepubis, which is a characteristic bone for pterosaurs. But then I look at the original fossil, and like the thing he's pointing at looks like a shadow from like unremoved Matrix. I'm like, I don't understand how you conclude that that is a prepubis and not just a shadow, and why you like that's the kind of thing where you just go look at the fossil, right? And then you can just say, oh nope, that's Matrix, and then you just walk away.
David Peters is an excellent example as to why paleontologists don't go on fossils just by pictures. They actually want to look at the original bones and such.
There have been cases where you have to publish on pictures simply because sometimes fossils are lost or destroyed.
Probably most famous would be the original Spinosaurus finds.
Yeah, the Spinosaurus holotype was destroyed in a Allied bombing on Berlin.
Yeah.
So
we lost Jackson. I actually think that's where we'll wrap up. Do you?
All right. Well, thank you.
Your thought, and we shall wrap up.
All right. Well, I think my only thought is, hey, in 3 or so hours, I'll be live on Dapper Dino with Landon.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna examine more of a Jason Lyle talk, so that should be fun.
Grab the link of that so I can throw it in the live chat here.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Thursday should be the next. What do you call it? The next speculative evolution thing. I'm hoping I'm going to remember. Please remind me, people, to email Bill Morgan and see if he and Jackson and I can all have a conversation. I'd like to invite RJ, but I don't think Bill likes RJ very much. And I don't think RJ is wrong, but I also would like for Bill to remain not as defensive as he got with RJ last time.
Oh, yeah.
Because he got into a super defensive mood super fast with RJ, which is understandable because RJ is not, he's a no-nonsense guy.
Yeah, he does not play around with creationists.
No. And fair, but I feel like that's not the way I want the conversation to go. I want Bill to still feel comfortable the whole way through. Kind of like I had a conversation with what was his name? McLeod? Yeah, McLeod. He's Dr. McLeod. He's a DDS, not a PhD in biology. But hey, he's got a DDS. He's Dr. McLeod. He's a former member of the Texas Board of Education and a young Earth creationist.
Yeah.
I got him to stop accepting the why don't we find or the we can't tell from the fossil record if it's the ancestor of anything, so it doesn't count as transitional. I managed to explain that to him by not getting him into a defensive place.
Nice.
So,
Jackson,
sorry, I don't know why that sent twice. My bad.
It's all right.
Yeah, Jackson.
That was a talk, all right.
So why don't you get your final thoughts out?
Oh yeah, Jackson was there for that.
Wait, was that? No, wait, hold on. Which one was that? That wasn't the one we did on Steve's channel, was it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with McLeod and David, I think.
The dude who just kind of sat there and stared into space.
Well, he's much less well read on this than we are, Jackson. We spend an inordinate amount of time.
He said, if he enjoys doing that, fine and all that. But my question was just kind of like, why would? I don't know. It's like if I were to ask someone, to debate someone like, did the Big Bang happen? I'm in no position to debate like the specifics of the Big Bang, and I would be like that. I would have just been sitting there, basically listening to the other person. So.
Yeah, I don't know if I would debate on that. I can talk about it a little bit. Like I can talk about we've got predictions from things like the.
Well, yeah, the CMBR and the red shifting and things like that. But I'm not a physics person. I can't do that. And so it kind of seemed during that talk that was like, okay.
It was very heavily on biology. And
well, yeah, and he was just sitting there while you and I and Steve basically did all of the talking. Not because we were hogging the conversation, but because Steve asked each of us, and he was just kind of like, yeah. I was like, okay.
It was still a fun time.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed it. He seemed like a nice guy.
I talked to McLeod again.
Oh, did you?
No, I wouldn't. I actually.
Oh, you would. Okay.
Maybe I should try to contact him.
Sure.
He might be a fun guest on some Saturday afternoon.
He seemed nice. I wasn't really sure what his argument with the clotting protein was. He didn't really say anything. He just kind of mentioned it and was like,
I think it comes down to it's complex, therefore God.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, which is funny because he read the prediction from Coin's book and then was like, I don't understand this. It's like, what is there not to understand? I don't get it. I really didn't get what his argument was because he just kind of dropped it there and we were like, what?
Well, I think TD Lane really wants to wrap it up. So
okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
We're just getting close to 2 hours.
Message me about the debate thing,
right.
Gaffer. So
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so to wrap up, if you want to go support Erika, her Patreon and Amazon wishlist are in the description. If you want to support me and you're in a good place financially, you can go look at my Amazon wishlist. If you want to support Dapper, you can go to his channel and his Patreon's there and his wishlist. Once again, only if you're in a good financial position.
Right. And actually also Benthoven's wish list. If you want to buy him a Hawaiian shirt, you totally can. So that way he can dress up like Uncle Kent.
Yes. Jackson, do you have like a wish list or Patreon?
I actually have both. I haven't put the Patreon in a video in a long time, and I don't think I've ever released the wish list.
Gee.
Not doing myself any favors here, but
Look, I know it always feels a little cringy to show yourself, but you know what? We put in a lot of time into this stuff, and it's nice when people appreciate that, and it also makes it so that we can put in a little bit more time.
I don't know. I really just get off to the views. That's it.
All right, fair enough. Hey, you can those sexy views.
I'm like, yes, watch my video.
Anyway, thank you all for coming. I'm surprised we even got 5 people. Yeah. Have a great day.
All right, bye.